We've got a presidential aspirant in the studio, and he's running mate, and this is Ruben Kigame and Irene Ngendo Kamau. Before we welcome them into the show, let's hear the day's proverb.
A cat goes to a monastery, it still remains a cat.
A cat goes into a monastery, it still remains a cat. Ruben Kigame.
You picked that one specially for me, right? I've never been to a monastery, sir. Which country is that from?
DRC.
Démocratique République du Congo.
Bien sûr, monsieur.
Oh, man. So you can't change your character. You can't change your life, right? You can't be anything else.
Actually, so this one isn't even a question of who you are, it's what you are.
It's what you are.
Can't change whatever you are. That's it.
Ruben would disagree.
You just aimed that at the politicians, didn't you?
Actually, it's odd that you should say that because politicians that we often speak of are the ones who've been elected. When we say politician, we often refer to those who've been elected.
Yes.
But those who are aspiring,
Yes.
at that point of aspiration, they escape the guillotine. When you get elected, bas.
You can't become anything else.
You're not fair game.
For everything.
I actually like that proverb. I think it resonates with my philosophy of maadili. Yeah, because we expect that when people get into office, somehow everything will change and they'll become these model queens. They'll become, the priests of the.
They'll walk into the monastery as cats and come out as priests.
If you're a cat, you'll remain a cat. Nothing changes, and for me that's a good proverb.
Thank you.
You picked that for me, didn't you?
Well, Ruben,
You've been reading
if you say so, I do. Yes.
You've been reading my Utu, Maadili, and Maendeleo philosophy.
Yes.
When Mheshimiwa says you picked it, no, this one is Mtukufu. When Mtukufu
you agree quickly.
you agree quickly.
I'm
Yeah,
more
yeah.
Mtukutu than
Mtukufu.
Ruben Kigame, thank you very much for joining us in the Situation Room today. We've had you here before. The last time we were talking about your aspiration to become president and you wanting to, vie in this election.
Yes.
You're still in the race.
I'm still in the race.
And the last time you were shopping around for a political party. Did you find one?
I found 3.
Yeah.
and successively decamped from all of them. Yeah, you look shocked.
You've done the thing the politicians do.
I'm running as an independent candidate. And it's not because I've not been in a party before. In fact, I helped to set up the RBK back in 2010 that helped Professor Kiapi to run. I was its SG at that point. And so I have an idea how those parties run. And for this particular race, I did actually get admission into a fairly good party that stands for a lot of the democratic principles we all aspire for. The FPK was my first stop. Well, only to discover that the games that were going on, I couldn't, are not that democratic. Actually, a candidate was imposed on me, and it became a matter of the highest bidder. So I stepped out. And for a while, was with a different party that gave me different conditions at the point I needed to run. And I also ended up with a different party, so 3 of them. And that particular one, I was given a choice between, running with my church principles and running as a party loyal, So I had
It's either the party or
your
church.
faith. And you don't touch my faith. Hapo tutakosana. Because my faith drives me. There's something your faith gives you that is bigger than the Constitution, for example. The Constitution can give you the law, the do's and don'ts. It can give you principles, but these are things that come and go. They can be changed. You can have a BBI today, and everything shifts. But principles such as truthfulness, justice, equality, and all of these things are not given to us by constitutions. Yeah, issues of rights. In some parties, I was stumbling against issues of outright discrimination, on the basis of my condition. And you touch my rights, I'll touch you. Yes.
So now you are running as an independent.
Yes.
Last week
Proudly
on Monday was the deadline for all presidential aspirants to present their names and those of their running mates to the IEBC.
Correct, on the 16th, yeah.
You hit the deadline.
Yes, I did.
Introduce us to your running mate.
Well,
she's in the studio.
She is above 18, you can be sure. So I'll let her introduce herself. And but you can be sure that for me it was the best pick. After looking at 7 different people, she came out top. Irene.
No. Before Irene talks about Irene, we want to understand the journey. How did Reuben Kigame settle on his running mate?
I am an activist of sorts. I'm a teacher, philosopher. I'm a communicator of sorts. I needed somebody to complement me in aspects that I'm not strong in. She's a very good manager, absolutely, for over 20 years. Done, both public and private management. Private for the longest time. She's an educator, like me, so we harmonize there. And so you can be sure one of the things we're going to be tagging on is going to be the education docket. But then her kind of leadership and mine harmonize in the sense that we have leadership chemistry. That is what I was looking for. I had a lot of great guys, a good economist that I have since talked to take up the economics docket. I do have some wonderful people in health and other aspects, but in terms of management, this was my best pick, and she is a woman. So inclusivity, in fact, our ticket is probably the most inclusive you will ever see in this country. Yes.
Irene Ngendo Kamau, the running mate for Reuben Kigame in the presidential race. Welcome to the Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's good to see you. So we know Reuben. He's a listener and a friend of this show. He's a teacher, like he says. He's a minister. He's a philosopher. He's many things. Who's Irene?
Wow. Well, thank you so much for having me this morning. I feel honored. It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, I know that is a question in the minds of very many Kenyans, like a name that is not known to anyone, and everybody would like to know, who's this Irene and how did you end up there? Irene is a mother of 4, 2 grown-up girls and 2 young ones still in primary. The grown-ups are already in campus and done with campus. I'm a teacher by profession, and I like telling people that I'm actually an edupreneur, which means I invest in education sector. Also a manager. I manage a group of schools within Nairobi. I've worked in the public sector. I've also worked in the private sector. In the public sector, I was a lecturer or have been lecturing at places like the Catholic University, the Kenya Institute of Administration. By then, that is what it was called at Lower Kabete, where they trained government officials, and many other places where I have worked. And I have served as an executive at the Kenya Secondary School Heads Association for years before I left on maternity leave and I didn't reapply again for that position. I've also served as an executive for the private school KPSA, Private Schools Association at Hurlingham, and the list is endless. Most importantly is that I have my bid or my call is largely on family values. I believe so strongly in family as the most basic unit of the of the society. If we get it right at the family, we get it right elsewhere.
Okay. So, Irene, you've done all of this work, teaching, relaying values to families and communities, etc. And so then here you are, presented with an opportunity to be the second in command for a nation, right?
Yeah.
Being the running mate for a presidential candidate. This is a tall order. It's a big deal. It's a lot different from teaching.
That's
it's a
true.
lot different from, and even in scale, it's a lot bigger, for lack of a better or more intelligent word. It's a lot bigger than maybe what you were used to. So it must have blown your mind at some point, right? How then do you put all of this in perspective? Because we are talking again as somebody who then would, for whatever reason, take over the nation. How do you translate that? And what spurred you on to then say, let's go, let's take a stab at this?
Okay. I appreciate your question, and actually I can read the question. It's really more of the scope of the job that I'm bidding for personally is probably the second topmost job in the Republic. Well, I'm aware of that. But this is my way of reasoning. One, it takes the person. No matter how big the job is, it takes a person. There has to be willingness, there has to be agreement, and there has to be purpose. We have to work towards a certain direction. It is not possible to run a country singularly, alone. You've got to need to put together teams that can be able to do the job with you. You've got to have the vision. Where do you want to take the people? Where are you taking the nation? That's really not a matter of where you have been. It's a matter of what is in the inside of you that you would want to find expression on the external. And when we get that kind of an expression, what you bring at table is the values, the systems. And we stand for those values. We stand for Maendeleo, which is development. And then we stand together as a team. You see, the greatest civilizations of the world are created by people. It's a person, one, that can be able to change an entire community. The power of one. When we vote in the right person, things are good. When we vote in the wrong person, we don't need to say how that goes.
I want to stick on some of those things that you've said,
Yes,
and
please.
while we're on it right now.
Yes, please.
And I mean, Ruben, sorry, I know you, but look, it's important because I think it translates to both of you here.
Yes.
And you've spoken about values and you've talked about beliefs. Let's talk about some of the things.
And
Utu.
so we stand
Right.
for like a fireplace.
Sure.
3 stones.
Let's talk
Utu,
about
Madili, and Maendeleo.
Let's look at some of the things that are happening in this country today.
No problem.
Right? Corruption is one of the largest vices, the greatest vices that is happening today that's robbing the life out of Kenya today.
Yes.
And often the question is asked, then what would you do about that? Because then again, it's hinged on values, it's hinged on integrity, it's hinged on then your personal beliefs, essentially robbing this country of its spirit. What then do you think would be needed to be done about something like this?
You know, I really, it baffles me how it takes so long for a government or for a people to deal with corruption. I still can't get it. Because you see, when we talk about values are things that you inculcate in children right from the word go. You bring up values in a society. I tell you what is wrong with this thing we call corruption. It's really not a person. It's a system. The entire country, the entire systems, when they are breeding corruption, it is something almost intrinsic. You don't need to coach anybody on how to give those bribes, really, for example, or to cut deals. They grow up knowing that the only way to make it in a land X is if I'm able to cut this deal. What would happen should you change that at the core? What would happen? The value systems that we are talking about are able to do so. I want to give an example of lands outside there where we have traveled and we have seen. where you would find a young kid right from the word go may not litter because they understand topic how to keep our environment clean. You right there don't walk on this grass, but then someone else will walk right past it and nobody will say and do anything about it. These things are not started at the top. They are started at the grassroots. At the very simple basic unit of the family is where values are made. When you talk about corruption, for example, you are addressing matters cartels. And I can assure you, this is the one part where Kenya is really struggling with. Cartels in the water department, cartels in this other department, even on matters health, basic things that shouldn't really be ridden with a lot of corruption, but it does happen. What corruption does is that it robs a nation of the future. What corruption does is that it bleeds all of us to enrich only one. In fact, we should be so far away. But then when we get all these monies that we are getting into the nation, and we have all these deals cutting all over the place, a small percentage gets to the economy. So we are actually fundamentally not doing what we are supposed to do. We don't grow exponentially as we should. Our geographies, our civilizations, our peoples, they are affected by that one word corruption. The funny thing is, it's excusable. People excuse it. People excuse it.
But then, Irene, we all know about this, and everybody will tell you corruption is bad, corruption is evil, corruption is holding us back in our development. The question is, as president and deputy president, what does this government of yours hope to do to deal with this particular vice once and for all?
What's your plan?
Yeah.
Rule of law. The rule of law. It is not possible to stop corruption if there is anyone that's above the law. It must be that everybody must be held accountable for what they do and for what they say, because even what they say affects what's done by the people around them and how they think. 2, shape the thinking of the people, shape the thinking of the masses. It is easier to do so right from the academic angle and all other aspects of governance that are available to and avenues of governance. That's how you could handle corruption. 3, accountability. Be accountable. When there is no accountability, that you cannot be able to be held accountable for anything, then at that point in time, you can deal with corruption. It is very, very important also that there is openness, inclusivity as well. These are very many and many other ways that can be used to shape corruption. Also, if you look at how corruption moves, it's really not about luck. I've heard these stories span around for so long. People talking about people are corrupt because they don't have, that's why they're trying to get XYZ. But really, corruption is a thinking way. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of thinking where they will tell you, now, you know, the way we say mutu wetu. Our person has gotten into this position and therefore they will bring development. But you don't ask yourself, how could he possibly bring development with the salary they are earning at that speed at which you're asking them to bring? So what happens at the local levels, when they come back home in their big Jeeps and Prados and stuff, we give them big positions. We call them Mr. So-and-so. In fact, we request whoever is in the Gishagi to step down for this fellow because they have been given a big position and now can come in a big style. Then we are encouraging corruption subconsciously right at the grassroots level. Change the thinking of the people. We've got the people as our greatest asset and our greatest card in this bid for presidency and vice presidency.
So let me put the screws, the bolts and nuts on the table here. We all know what the problem is. We know that Kenya is corrupt and everybody is feeling the pinch. What do? We don't go into presidency like a game. They say the politics game. It's not a game. For us, we go into this as a rescue operation. It's difficult. It's nasty. It's not because any of us would not want to sit at home and, teach a class and or sing a song, produce an album. We are at a point in our country where if we don't do a rescue operation, we are going to be in this place for a long time, or even, become worse as a nation. And corruption is only one aspect. But we baptize it corruption because, we're used to the language. It's actually theft. We steal from everybody. But we've got to a point where nobody, we think nobody should ask us. Nobody should do anything. So we come to this as a rescue operation. As a team, we want to rescue in this way. First of all, insist that we must stop and remove leaders that do not have character, leaders without example, and begin to handpick the people we know in the community, not just at the presidency, but right from MCAs to MPs. So we want a government that has people of values, people of character. That is where it begins. Leadership by example. And it doesn't begin when you get into office. It begins at the campaign stage. How you do your meetings, how you talk to people, where you get your money, how you conduct, your affairs. Are you accountable at the campaign stage? If you are not accountable at the campaign stage, you can be sure, given an office, you'll still not be accountable. And so we are insisting that not just at the presidency, we must look out for these people who are working hard and are not taking what does not belong to them and put them in government. So if you look at how the politics of parties are done, they are very ethnic. You have negotiated spaces. So in fact, if you look at Kenya's politics right now, whether you're looking at Azmio or you look at Kenya Kwanza or any other formation, the tendency is to say, come join me, you're from this community, you'll bring me this percentage of the community. And in return, we'll give you these many seats in parliament. We'll give you these many appointments. You'll become this, you'll become that. Unfortunately, nobody is thinking at that point about who are these people we are giving and is this government inclusive. That's how we've done politics in Kenya. And some groups may have, been very loud in terms of saying, we don't want BBI, we want a new start, you'll have a bloated government if you implement BBI. But you will realize they're doing exactly the same thing that they were criticizing the other side for. Bloated government. Bring everybody on board and sort things out, later on. So you're doing it wrong at the campaign stage, at the planning stage. If you get into office, you will certainly mess up the country. And so for corruption, the first place to stop is appoint people of character. Then secondly, stop the bleeding, because corruption is about bleeding the economy. Stop the bleeding by ensuring that you have systems of checks and balances, accountability. If you talked to the Auditor General today, he will give you figures. She will give you figures of what has been misappropriated in the last 1 year, in the last 5 years. All the data is there. What is lacking is the will to be able to crack the whip.
To seal those loopholes.
Yes.
Let's take a break at this point. It's 29 minutes to 9. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. Our guests this morning, presidential aspirant Ruben Kigame, who's one of the 40 independent presidential aspirants that we have so far of the 55 people who want to be president in this country. He's in the studio together with his running mate, Irene Ngendo Kamau, who's here. We want to understand their campaign. They're among the people who have been saying, come on, people, we also want fairness in terms of media coverage and media space. Ruben is getting that right here this morning to explain to Kenyans why Ruben Kigame and Irene.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
With Eric Latif, Nduoko, C.T. Muga, and our guests, presidential aspirant Ruben Kigame and his running mate, Irene Ngendo Kamau. City.
The what to do and the how to do it seems to be the conversation that many presidential candidates have. Unfortunately, it all sounds theoretical.
What do you mean?
You see, when we talk of corruption, we talk about it as though it's a problem. It isn't. The problem is impunity. Corruption is a product of that impunity. So long as people know, not think, not feel, know they can get away with whatever it is that they're doing, which they know is wrong, they'll continue getting away with it. Now, I've listened to Ruben Kigame, I've listened to Irene, and I'm not convinced that what they have told me will even begin to touch the very tip of solving this problem whose manifestation we refer to as corruption. And yet it is the one thing that guarantees that the county systems in this country will not move forward. The national government will not move forward because corruption, as we call it, I'm calling it impunity, has become a national pastime. Everyone participates in it in one way or the other.
You're not convinced that what they're saying can actually tackle corruption?
No.
Irene said observance and strict observance of the rule of law. Ruben said start from the beginning, who you're appointing into a cabinet, lead by example. Those ones are not convinced.
No, they are not, because all these people who are appointed start off that way.
I don't think so, City.
Please, tell me how you don't think so.
So, first of all, we are a peculiar kind of people as Kenyans. Because we see them, we know them, we actually interact with them daily. Unfortunately, we still keep pampering them. We don't pamper anybody. We want to start what I would call a character revolution. We do things and say things that they dare not say. For example, I'm saying this. Check me out as a candidate. As Samuel would say in the Bible, whose goat have I stolen? You know, if you can find a goat that Reuben stole, you know, if you can find, you know, that I took somebody's wife, you know, or I did something in the community, took from the kitty of Kemsa or whatever, then by all means tell me, Reuben, don't run. And it's a daring thing. It's not one of those things you do daily in Kenya. Impunity begins with people not wanting to go on a pedestal, to be on, to bring their lives to that kind of test. We are saying begin with us. That is something that everybody, as you know, Haji would say, as the DPP would say, they have all these things in the law. You have Chapter 6 in the Constitution. The problem is nobody is willing to step on the wire. We are saying this is the first time we are putting ourselves on the line. Let's begin with character. 2, that our appointments into government, the people we put over the finance, the people we put over the health docket, the people we put over the education are going to be people that are tested on the same standard of character. The biggest thing we're bringing to the table is really character, leadership by character. Without that, you're going nowhere. Because here are people telling you, if you elect me, I'm actually going to do A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D. They've been in office for the last 5 or 10 years, some more than that. And the record is actually horrible. We are not here to call names, but honestly, as Kenyans, if we elect the people who have brought us to where we are, we're fools. And so we bring to the table, the first checkpoint is, who are we? What kind of record do we bring in terms of who we have been? Now, the second thing is the will. You see, impunity works with lack of will. That you can see something is wrong, but you'll bypass it. You will see something is not going right. You'll say, achana tu, because you appoint cronies, you appoint friends, you appoint people who are like you, who are ready to bend the law. We want the will to act, and you can be sure our candidature brings to the table the will to do something radical about impunity. And like I said, it begins at the campaign stage.
At this point in campaigns, Ruben,
Yes.
Are you among the presidential aspirants who met with the IEBC yesterday?
Yes, I met them. There were quite a number of us, both from political parties and independents. Yes, there are those that we expected to come that did not show up. We sent representatives, and that sort of did not rub Chebukati the right way. He brought it out. I'm the boss here, so it was interesting.
Among the people who were there, I mean, what we were getting out of Bomas yesterday was many of the aspirants, particularly independent aspirants, were questioning the law and saying, okay, there's a requirement that is being introduced, so they said, by the IEBC on what we are supposed to do, present 2,000 signatures in at least half of the count from at least each of the half of the counties, but also come with copies of IDs, and this will not augur well for us. Can you give us more time? Can you make it, work away? Can you make it simpler for us to do this? Are you among those that make that application?
That sounds like what the aspirants are saying. It's not. And that's what is being pumped out here. That, aspirants are complaining, we need to collect these 48,000 signatures. That's absolutely not the issue. And let me also clarify that it's not the independents alone that are raising this question. We had people from Kenya Kwanza with concerns. We had people from Usawa kwa Wote. We had like Mtumishi Njeru Kathangu from Ford Asili. They are raising questions. So it's not an independent candidate's issue.
What is the issue?
What's the problem?
So the issue is this, that having collected the 48,000 plus signatures, which we have, the IEBC wants the candidates to also present copies of identity cards from the same, the same signatories. And the issue is not that we cannot collect them. The issue is that this is then brought to our attention after we have continued to collect the signatures.
Okay.
So most of us have the signatures.
So,
But the thing of it is, there's so much suspicion in the community. If you take my identity card, what are you going to be doing with it? Are you going to be rigging the election with it? So people are not willing to give the ID cards. And then this is something that has not been enforced before. It was not enforced in 2017. I ran in 2013. It was not enforced. The BBI signature collection happened. It was not enforced. So
the word here is enforced.
Yes.
That means it's in law.
It is in law that you need to identify yourself one way or the other. The issue is, why should I take your copy of the ID? And we are coming at the backdrop of concerns about data protection in this country. So, for example, not just this particular requirement. When Kenyans were asked, for example, to give their ID copies when registering their lines anew, tell me how many complied. We still have a backlog with that. So what has happened is actually that citizens have become suspicious of the government playing on their data. And so many of them are saying, you want to rig the election using my details? I'll not give you the ID. And so we're saying, stagger this requirement. We're not saying, that it's not the right thing to do. So let me give you a practical example.
So you want the law bent a little bit to accommodate you this time, which is what you are saying is the problem with Kenyans, that, because of circumstances here and there.
No.
We'd like the law bent.
We have a problem. One, IEBC is supposed to conduct civic education and tell the public, when the candidates come to you, they are going to need this and this. It is legit. It is in the law. It's a requirement. Now, if you, for qualification, so you gazette the process in January, resign in February, and then, start the process of qualifying with the ORPP in April, then have your symbols certified by IEBC. By that time, the time you're getting to then collect the books for collecting the signatures, you're already in April. So most candidates have had about 2 to 3 weeks of the process. So it's not about the inability, it's about the time.
Okay.
It's too short.
So because it's a bone of contention for candidates, aspirants across board. So has it always been there? This particular requirement, has it always been there, or is it something that was sprung up on aspirants literally 3 weeks ago?
At the end of the day, the issue is, why hasn't IEBC enforced this if it has been there? All right? That this is not a requirement IEBC has had before.
Okay.
But they're pushing it now so that we then begin to ask the question, why now? We just had, a referendum attempt. Why didn't you push it then? So the process is the issue, that by the time we all are qualifying, then we get knocked out because you have 2 or 3 weeks to go around the country. Some places in this country do not have services that will make it easy for you to even get those particular signatures.
Ruben, what I'm hearing here is a blatant excuse. Because if you ask why now, when will we ever be ready to say it's now?
So, that
that question could have been asked by Dennis Wawero and Junet Mohammed at the IEBC, at a referendum stage. Had IEBC brought up that issue during BBI? That issue could have been brought out at any point. Now it's being brought up now. So if we postpone it now and bring it back in 2027, the question that will be asked by the candidates then is, why now?
No. The whole thing is that, and the reason why it all settles at IEBC is that when it comes to processes, IEBC tends to be caught up by, deadlines and timelines and so on and so forth. So that, for example, if this communication was made, let's say, in February, a lot of the candidates would know this is a requirement, and then the public be notified. Now, where we are now, we're not saying that people have not complied with all these requirements. Most of us are at the point where we're doing actually the tallying. But then it comes out because some of our members are affected. We must actually speak for them.
Do you see this as because I can just come out and ask the question plainly. Do you see it as a deliberate attempt, maybe Irene can also come in here, to then force out some people from the running? Because that allegation has been made. Is this what we're seeing here?
Allow me to just comment, then give it to her. Because some people will certainly be locked out of the process, but it's not necessarily because of IDs, lack of IDs. There are those that are actually going to be disqualified because they don't have degrees. They're running, but they were using the law that was passed recently that,
MPs and MCAs.
yes, if MPs and MCAs are, exempted, so they thought the presidential race would also be exempt. So some will be locked out. There are some who will be locked out primarily because they don't have the funds to even conduct the process of collection of signatures. There are some that will be locked out primarily because they feel this is a race I went into prematurely. There are some that have actually, for example, ditched the race and joined me. So it's multiple processes that are at play, and it's not just the IDs.
Irene?
Yeah, it's true. I want to say that actually there should be an upholding of the rule of law, like I said from the beginning. So there's a requirement that has been there all along in the IBC for the presentation of the same, the ID cards, then it should be followed. it's important to do so because you don't start off wrong, you start off right. If you intend to build the country and you intend to heal and stop the bleeding, you start from the word go, right from the parts of the identity cards. The parameters, the systems, the processes towards that is what is becoming questionable. Because you first received, IBC received the nominations for the running mates, the nominations for the candidates, and within a very short time, then made a requirement that these IDs should be availed in a period of only 2 weeks. That, for me, came out like almost not in good taste at all. The second thing is that it is true that some candidates will actually not be able. Some aspirants will actually not be able to provide or to go through for reasons ranging from they are giving up their bid for someone else, for reason of they're not ready for maybe one thing or the other. I don't want to say why, but it's also true that IEBC would be keen on bringing down that number for reasons we all know, because the number of aspirants is pretty huge. Probably the hugest that the Republic of Kenya has ever seen. It translates into running costs and operational logistical challenges by the time we are running that presidential campaign, plus and including even the printing of the ballot papers and everything. So that is within their confines and within their parameters. For us, we're saying what they could have done or what IBC could have done is give ample enough time and follow it up with civic education, ensuring that when we go to the people, the reception is much more favorable. However, it still can be done, and it has been done, and it will continue to be done by those who intend to qualify. But we're just saying, going forward, educate the people on what exactly is supposed to be done way in advance, because we knew there's an election coming long time ago. Why spring up a card out of like within a very...
Actually, you've met, I like the way you preambled it.
Yeah.
We knew the election was going to take place a long time ago. If you wanted to vie for a position like the presidency, should you not then have taken the time to understand what is actually required of this job? Is it the IBC's duty to educate you, or is it your duty to find out? Yes, they have a duty to tell the public what these things are. But whose primary duty is it? You are the candidate, not IEBC. Should it not be you who makes sure you dot every I and cross every T? Is it not you who should make sure that you've covered all your bases? Because my problem is, if you aren't covering your bases in the basic requirement of running for this particular seat, when we now ask you to be prepared for the ugly seat of the presidency, how many other things are you going to miss out on?
Let me give some practical responses here. One, when you've got to sign these signatures within IBC provided literature, the books they give you. You don't just pick up foolscaps and start signing. So you get those particular books from the IBC. When were those books availed? Not when this gazettement took place in January. They were availed 3 weeks ago. And so, yes, we knew we need to do this, but we kept pushing for the process to be started earlier so that there is ample time. So that when were the candidates gazetted? Last week. Now, until you are able to fit within the timelines, you cannot qualify. But the timelines are pretty brief. Of course, everybody asks if you're running for a presidential race, then you should have all these people ready. And they're there. We have people that are ready to sign for us. The issue is we have gotten to a suspicion mode as a country whereby people will not give you their IDs. It's not because it cannot be done. You need more time to educate them. Now, secondly, we should also be asking ourselves, why is it we have so many candidates coming out? It's because it's a replication of a problem. We are sending a statement as a country that things are so bad that just about anybody, City Muga, Nduok, we need to see change in this country. I think it's a very loud statement that things are wrong. And so instead of castigating the big number of, I think the question should be, what can IEBC do, not just to be inclusive, but to ensure that the process is fair for all? When we know, for example, that certain groups are funded by the states, we know that certain muscles, certain resources are used for certain candidates. We know that collecting data for some people is a matter of, tell the chief, I need the IDs. So then you pit us against these guys. Of course, they will comply with no problem because they have state support. Then the Kenyans look at us like whiny people when, some people have gone ahead of us. Even with regard to campaigns, for example. We know that the official time for campaigning begins the 29th. But we have no state officers that have been campaigning for the last 5 years. Not working for us. But we are going to be blamed for not making it. They are in government. They know the process. They know where the resources are. It is actually unfair.
So they've been using state resources.
Yes, and that is
to campaign indirectly,
and not just not indirectly. They are all over the place, and it's obvious that you have people that are given an advantage. Now, then IEBC comes and says comply like those guys.
Within a short time. Let's take this break and say goodbye to the audience on KTN Home. I know there are very many people who have questions to ask about this campaign. What does it represent? How different is it from the others that we've seen? You've been complaining, Ruben, that media is pitching this campaign like it's a two-horse race and ignoring people like Ruben Kigame and others. No, but here you are.
Here I am at the tail end of the game, 77 days later, So...
Anyway, Ruben, we've been talking about, and Irene, we've been talking about the requirement to beat some of these deadlines by the IEBC. There's also something else that you have come out to publicly talk about, and this is from the very beginning, that you feel like you're being decampaigned by the media when you don't get fair coverage of your presidential campaign and your presidential message. What exactly is your complaint?
Maybe it's a little unfair to say that on SpiceFM after you've been given an opportunity to be on air. But we need to go beyond the convenience of being, accorded such space and ask, what has the media portrayed this particular race to be? So a media narrative has been coined, and I would say strategically, to indicate that there are two main candidates. When we know that...
they are 55.
Yes, they are 55. And so, unless we don't know arithmetic, that is a narrative of convenience. But I think we need to be true to ourselves and say, who owns media? There's lots of investment by, the main players in this election in the media. So that is something we don't talk about very loudly, but you can be sure that there are media houses that have near vowed that they will give preferential treatment to particular candidates. And they've come out clearly. Media owners saying, Sisi tukona huyu. Now, that notwithstanding, we have never, for example, really made it to the print media. Every page you open, every single newspaper every day, it's about those two. So it's a narrative of convenience. However, in the midst of those are some really good journalists and editors and stations that open up their doors for us, and we're grateful. And at the same time, I do believe that maybe the days ahead, when we finally hit the campaign trail, that we'll see a lot more coverage, maybe, or interest. And so it's the narrative that we are against. When the pollsters come out and they put out the polls, you know, who do they poll? You never see our names.
Can
you
I
never
ask
see,
a question?
Sure.
Even as you're saying this, Ruben, you must have, mulled with this in your mind often. Why do you think it is that attention is given, as you say, to just a few? What are the reasons that play out in your head?
Do you want the true reasons or you want the media reasons?
Oh, but of course, the truth.
Your truth.
We are in the media. So we know our media reasons. Now tell us your
truth.
It's money. Yes.
Expound on that, please.
There's no expounding. It's
Money in investment, money in bribery. What do you mean?
money in ownership, money in the paying of journalists and airtime, brown envelopes, notwithstanding. It is a fact that you cannot ignore. And whoever has the most gets the most airtime.
It's an allegation, Ruben.
What do
We hear it ourselves, but it's an allegation. When there's proof is when we are told here's the evidence. But so long as it is just being stated, it doesn't make it a fact. It just makes it an
That's
allegation.
why I asked you whether you want the truth or you want the media truth. So the truth is this, that I have been asked for money. All right? You want...
In order for what to happen?
In order to be covered.
Okay. And how
and
how regularly?
Oh, well, let me give you a case example. I unveiled my running mate last week on Tuesday. Who covered it? We made the invite to every possible media house. Was it covered? Was it a big story? I thought it was a big story. Well, on the day of, declaring my bid last year, July 7, not only was the media actually blocked from accessing Chester House, some friends of mine were actually diverted and told there is no conference here. And even worse, they went as far as returning money we had paid for security officers. Ukiona polisi anarudisha pesa, anasema, you cannot have a meeting here, we have instructions from above. This is an evil country. These are the manners we need to change. And, I don't blame the media. I blame the control and interference by the state.
Ruben, do you think that there's a general feeling among the population that this race has the front runners and the others? And not necessarily because the media has painted it this way, but that the people themselves look at it and they know, okay, so-and-so has been in this race for many more times. They have a bigger national platform, so therefore they are a front runner. And then there's a new entrant like Ruben Kigame.
That is a fact. The issue is, in the case of the media, for example, what does the media do with that in terms of balanced coverage, in terms of, giving equal space for the ideas that would shape this country, etc. But that be as it may, there will always be front runners. It's how you cover it. It's how you talk about it. It's how you take care of the so-called disadvantaged, and it's not just in terms of the candidates. It's also all the way to what gets prominence. In the media today, political stories, for example, will get more coverage, more prominence than, let's say, hunger in Marsabit or banditry in Baringo.
Yep.
You know that politics will always be among your first 2 or 3 stories.
Yep.
And sometimes such things are actually just not covered at all. So agenda setting and all that goes with editorial policies in this country, it's not just about, a presidential race. It's how we prioritize our stories in the media.
When you organize your rallies, because you've been organizing meetings, rallies, political events, do you feel like you are able to mobilize the same number of people as, say, Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, William Ruto, Jimmy Wanjigi? Do you have the same capacity to mobilize the people?
I would like to ask a question before I answer that. And the question is, have you ever heard of something called professional mourners?
I have.
They're in cities.
Not only have we heard of them, this one we know for a fact.
Are you one of them? Can you be hired?
Actually, it requires a lot more preparation. It's a skill set that it takes time to acquire. Unfortunately, I haven't acquired.
You haven't gotten there yet.
No, not yet.
So having been in this space for a while, I can tell you for sure, we have professional hired crowds by politicians. Are you asking whether we do hire crowds? We don't. Now, do we still have crowds? Not yet. We are going to have crowds from the 29th. Have we had meetings, indoor meetings? Yes, we have, to discuss our, policies. We meet the people and so on. Have I attended funerals and, weddings or whatever? Yes, we have. And so the thing is that the crowds are not necessarily your votes. It is how you sell your agenda. Na tunasema kutangulia sio kufika. So you can be sure that in terms of people hearing a different way of doing politics, measuring on our three main things, utu, maadili na maendeleo, the country is hearing more about that than all this noise and insults and the name calling. You will not hear that from us.
One of the things about politics is they say it changes people. You will start off with the ideals that I hear you and Irene talking about, and then you get in. And lo and behold, we start asking, hey, what happened to that Ruben?
It's been 13 months.
There's this
if
guy.
You've not heard it, you'll not hear it in the next 76 days.
No, it is when people get in. You see, one is a candidate so that they can actually get to that desired position. And so one must discuss that desired position.
Why do I get the impression that, like you say, that a cat would still be a cat, even if it is
It goes into a monastery.
Right? So if you put in, right from the word go, whatever quality that goes into government, regardless of what you do, they'll still get out the same. So whoever walks in, the character, the values, the person themselves, that much doesn't change that. You see, they say power corrupts and so on and so forth.
An absolute power corrupts.
An absolute power corrupts, absolutely. But when we deal with the value systems of the person, you get into that space. Number one, what's your agenda? If your agenda is of a personal level, of a personal type, then it's possible to corrupt and corrupt absolutely. Number two, do you have a vision? Where do you want to take the people? Is it a people-driven thing or is it a personal-driven thing? And number three, are you answerable to anyone? Are you accountable to anyone? There are systems that should be able to check the persons that are going in there. Because not just about that because they have come in, they come in saying, promising heaven. And once they get there, they deliver hell. That can be true. But that is dependent on the person you put in. On the campaign trails, anything is said. People will be told anything and everything so long as you can get the votes out of the people. But the people would have to seek deeper. There is that which is spoken and that which is not spoken. In most cases, that which is not spoken is a real card. Look for that which is not spoken.
Irene, we had Jimmy Wanjigi's running mate here, Willie Sotieno, and he told us in their campaign, their strategy, a runoff. And once they get into the runoff, they're sure they're winning. Is your strategy the same?
No.
Do you see a runoff or do you see yourselves winning
we will
in the
win.
first round?
We are taking it.
How many votes?
By a landslide, we will take it.
How many?
You see, let me show you this. for you to be able to take on or to do a change of what is on the ground currently, for those that have been campaigning long enough and longer than us, you only need, and I've been saying this over and over, it's all about the narrative out there. The branding of the people. What exactly are you telling the people? What are you packaging for the people? And is it something that resonates with the people? Is it something that the people need? Does the country need that which you're bringing to the table? Working for strategy of runoff and so on and so forth. You can have very beautiful strategies on the table, playing the game as if it's a game of chess. But when we are doing the game of chess, where is the people? Where are the people that you want to control? And what value is it to be a ruler in a country of people that are sleeping hungry and so on and so forth? You don't want to be a ruler of such a country. Bring that strategy on the table when we need a strategy. Good point. Think, people, you have the bigger card and you have a more superior card than all the others. We're going the people way. We want to ensure that it's not just about winning. Win with a landslide, because the people will resonate with who we are, first and foremost, and what we stand for. There is always a higher ideal that people yearn for. You see, in the bottom of everybody, in the hearts of everybody, there is that thing which cries out for the ideal, for the authentic. And that's what we're bringing to the table, a third authentic option.
Yeah, and then, of course, you look at our ticket as the most inclusive, looking at Irene bringing in a very, very strong appeal with the women, certainly. Both of us deal a lot with the youth that, form a very, very huge constituency. I don't think the big boys at all bring to the table the kind of persons living with disability. I don't think that there is a way we can really be ignored by the religious groups, the Muslims, the church, and so on. We represent a lot, the teachers in the education field. There are a lot of people who feel us. It's one thing to just hear slogans and things. A lot of people know we live with them. They touch us. We take Ubers and we'll be able, in Eldoret, I'll take a border. We are with the people. We talk to the people. You tweet me, you DM me, I'll DM you back. And we're on social media, in these social spaces. I think if you can relate to the people, you are able to guarantee a fair victory. And with what we are looking at, I think all these constituencies will bring us a very good number of votes.
Even as we look then going into the coming days, I think at this point where now the common phrase then is crunch time. What about those who have a question? What about those who are not sure? There are people who will make a decision at the very last minute.
True.
What is the tipping point?
Every
what's
time,
that tips the scales in making one decision or the other?
Every time you see an opinion poll, you have a fairly large amount of undecided votes. That is both good and bad. It is good for us as a team because we feel them. And these are part of the people we are talking to and telling them you don't have to choose between worse and bad, that there is actually a third authentic option. And we are also feeling them at the level where the reasons why they don't want to vote is not just those two particular choices. It's actually that the country has been mismanaged, so much so that the poverty levels, the hunger, the fuel prices, all these things are hitting so hard at the person. And our insistence as a team is that people come before profits, that people come before infrastructure. You do infrastructure for people, not for infrastructure's sake. And so we want to reverse the equation whereby if I look at the city or I look at Ndu, the first thing I ask is, have you guys eaten? When you need to go to a hospital, can you get the services? When you have children, how are they going to go to school? If it's a a woman that needs to work but has nowhere to leave their children? Can we have daycare centers?
Yeah.
So we're looking at all these things. Even when we look at education per se, for example, you're basically asking, why are we punishing children at class 8 as dropouts and at form 4? Why are we mistreating our youth by throwing them out of the system because of how we do education? So we need a review. My government would do a review to the effect that we would reverse this, because it's more expensive not to give free education, for example, because you have to deal with the overlapping issues that come up, drug addiction, early pregnancies. You have all this depression and parents selling land that you worked so hard to get in order to educate. Why should we be punishing a city for an investment he's worked for 50 years to get? So my team has looked at this and says, if we can prevent the bleeding, we stop the bleeding of the economy and ensure that everything that comes in is used for what it's, we pay taxes, but they're used for the wrong reasons. We want to ensure that they're used for the right reasons and in an accountable system. Once you have those checks and balances, you'll be able to see people's faces and say, you know what, something has changed. We want to bring hope to the people. We want a ticket that will ensure Kenyans can trust government again, because our trust is at an all-time low. In fact, that's part of the reason why people will not even give you IDs, because they're asking, what are you going to do with my IDs?
They don't trust the government that issued them the ID.
Exactly. And today, is it Huduma Center? Is it the Huduma number? Is it my ID? Is it something else? We don't trust our government. We need to develop trust in government for this country to change.
Ruben and Irene, we thank you very much for coming today. And we wish you all the best as you go through the steps of being formally declared as candidates in this election, and also now kicking off your campaigns officially for the next couple of days into August 9th.
And thank you for opening the space. You
Thanks
still
so
stand
much.
out as the most inclusive media. So you have helped change the narrative.
That's by design. That's
Yeah.
by design. Irene, it's good to have you in the show. We hope to have you again.
Thank you so much for having me,
Yes.
and it has been a pleasure even to sit with you and talk together. We feel honored.
Come again. In the next couple of weeks, you'll have state security, so you'll be coming here with bodyguards and all. When you become
You mean you
officially,
didn't see them?
when
I
you
could
officially
hire you.
declared candidates.
You can be my bodyguard.
Nice
Thank you so
one,
much for
nice
having
one.
us.
Na tutakuja State House hapa Caledonia,
Karibu.
alafu tuende Karen,
Hello.
tukae chini tukunywe chai,
Beautiful.
kila kitu. Thank you very much.